They have told us that it is only a matter of time until, if we are a woman, a person of color, an LGBTQIA plus identifying person, that we will be killed. And then they act surprised when an assassination attempt occurs on the president. No, that is not an accident. That is not a coincidence. That is narrative grooming so that some crazy person who has no self-control and no respect for the law does exactly what that shooter did on that roof outside of the rally.
The media narrative has a real problem right now. Not just that Joe Biden is incompetent. Their problem is, at this point, is the narrative is now switched to where they are the party that is, fomenting a coup against a primary elected president that they're trying to get rid of because he had a bad debate night. And their only arguments against Donald Trump on the issues of economy, immigration, and foreign affairs, the people aren't buying.
All right, guys, a huge wrap-up. Trump with a stem-winder conversation last night, speech going past midnight. I kept thinking it was going to like 11:10, 11:15. No. He just kept going and going and going, giving praise to the chart that saved his life. Let's take a look at some of what he had to say.
Done by the Border Patrol, one of the greatest charts I've ever seen. It showed everything just like that. You know the chart. Oh, there it is. That's pretty good. Wow. Last time I put up that chart, I never really got to look at it. But without that chart, I would not be here today.
All right, a lot to break down. Before I get to that, I want to thank one of our great sponsors who's really bringing light to what's going on in the retirement world. Because for many of us, the only options we ever thought we had were IRAs or 401k, but we don't. We actually have a much more advanced retirement system and opportunities and options than we are given credit for. Bank on Yourself is actually the proven retirement alternative that lets you bypass Wall Street and the government and really puts you in control of your own retirement. I want to tell you a little bit about what Bank on Yourself offers you. It's guaranteed predictable growth for your retirement. It's tax-free retirement income. You're going to know exactly what your tax rate is going to be in retirement. Zero. Right? Under current tax law, that protects you from a tax tsunami headed your way. You are in control. You get access to your money. You don't have to worry about the limits. Think about this. With your IRA or your 401k, they tell you how much you can put in every year, what year you can withdraw it at, how much you can withdraw, how you can spend it, the government is in control. That's what we know. Not so with Bank on Yourself. The best reason, though, is that you have peace of mind. You'll know the minimum guarantee of your retirement. So right now you can get a free report with the details on how the Bank on Yourself strategy adds guarantees, predictably, and most importantly, control to your retirement. Go to bankonyourself.com/Spicer. Bankonyourself.com/it's Friday, .com/Spicer. All right. Big wrap up to the convention last night. I'm telling you, Democrats, the media, everybody's agreeing that this was the best convention of either party in modern history. Well done. Trump crushing it last night. But the big reporting this morning, we're going to get to this with the panel, is about whether Joe Biden stays in the race. A lot of reporting that this weekend, during this COVID recuperation period in Delaware, that the calls are coming through, that Biden has crossed over and realizes he has to go, and now them putting a plan in place to figure out how to hand it off. We're going to break down the latest on this and how it would go. Huge panel for you today. Nan Hayworth, former member of Congress from New York. She's going to join us. Doug Collins from the America First Policy Institute, former member of Congress from Georgia, plus my good friend, Liz Wheeler. She's got a brand new show coming out on The Blaze. She's going to be here as well. Before I get to that, I got to tell you, if you're the decision maker in a company, either the CEO or you control the finances, you need to check out Ramp. It is unbelievable. I told you this story before. We had a guest on the show probably a couple months ago, heard about Ramp, said he switched over, uses it for his company's expenses. Plus, it's a corporate card. So if you give a corporate card to your employees for spending, this is something that's going to be a massive game changer in your company. Ramp is where it's at, folks. It adds a level of efficiency that you haven't seen. It saves you time and money when it comes to your corporate expenses. It itemizes your receipts in a way that you don't have to have all these lengthy expense reports. It allows you to add limits to your employees, where they can spend, how much they can spend. Holy smokes, total game changer. And here's the best part. If you are that decision maker, you're the CEO, you're head of the finances, you issue corporate cards or oversee expenses, then you can get $250 now as a viewer of the show. Just go to ramp.com/Spicer. Ramp.com/Spicer will get you this. And it's going to literally add so much efficiency to your company's expense and corporate reporting. You are going to thank me. Remember, cards are issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. Now, without further ado, let's get to the Friday panel. Doug Collins, Nan Hayworth, Liz Wheeler. All right, guys, what an ending to a convention. I just want to start, before we get into the analysis. I've been doing this all week, sort of dancing with the stars, judges, ratings. Liz, if you had to give it a number last night, give me a rating, 1 to 10. If you were judging last night, just give me the number.
Oh, the first half of Trump's speech was a 12 out of 10. It was one of the most outstanding, profound performances, genuine, sincere, serious, in addition to his usual humor and showmanship. It was so good. I was riveted, and I've watched a billion of these things. The second half of it dragged on a little long. Once I, looked at the clock and saw that it was past midnight, I was like, all right, time to wrap it up, sir. But I thought it was one of the most touching performances I've ever seen from him.
So hold on. Give me the number. What do you here? Give me your
12 out of 10.
12 out of 10. Come on. All right, Doug Collins, give me a score.
Are we talking about Trump's speech or the night?
Oh, good question. Gosh. This is
Oh,
why you're so give me both then. Give me your night and then your Trump.
Trump's speech, 9.5 for the first 25 minutes, and he added in the rest. The night itself, about a 9. It was really good. At times, it showed what an RNC convention can look like.
Nan?
I would give the week something close to a 10. I thought last night was in some ways anticlimactic, just in that, I've been obviously listening to impressions from the world outside of my pro-Trump, pro-GOP world. And the ones we really need to win over are the folks who are wondering. So it was very sports heavy. That's a fair point. It was wonderful to see President Trump, who obviously was the star of the night. It was wonderful to see him with his family, so genuine, so warm. And an incredibly dramatic moment, obviously, to observe this man who had nearly been killed 5 days earlier be himself. So in that way, wonderful. I think there was, because the speech went on so very long, it was President Trump being President Trump in a calmer way. He was not combative, which was great. But I think there was a bit of a missed opportunity. So overall, I would give the night more like, a 7. I'm being a tough grader, but
Wow. All right, I want Professor Wheeler because I like the way that Liz grades. Nan Hayworth, I'm never taking Nan Hayworth's class. God.
No, I want this man to win. And I know what he's capable of doing. And I thought the convention, I'd give the rest of the convention at least a 10. I thought it was amazing. The range
Sean,
of
let me jump in.
Presentations.
Let me jump in. So I want to preface my good grade by saying, you know me, we've had many dinners together where the only thing that comes out of my mouth are negative things about every politician that you and I know. I am on principle, I dislike all politicians. So I certainly support Trump and I'm excited to vote for him, but I am not a fangirl of any politician. I, on principle, dislike all politicians. So when I give a grade like that, it's out of the ordinary for me to say that. And one of the reasons that I'm giving that grade is not only because his narrative of the attempted assassination was so touching and so sincere and so authentic. It's not only because of that, it's because of what some of the other elements of the night said to me. Now, when Hulk Hogan was up there on stage, I'm not his target audience, right? Like, I think that's a little absurd. It was sort of enjoyable, but also like a little bit much. But I'm not the one he's trying to reach by having Hulk Hogan up on that stage. The people that he's trying to reach are the working class man of America, the disaffected, maybe lower middle class, the people who thrust Trump to victory in 2016. That was his strategy in 2016, is to say the white working class, we know you've been left behind and I'm going to be your champion because I know the elite have screwed you over. He got away from that a little bit narrative-wise in 2020, and I love to see him getting back to that in 2024 because I think that's going to make a huge difference.
So
I would just offer this very quickly. I think those folks are with him. I would like to see, given the presence of an Amber Rose, for example, which was galvanizing, I thought that was fantastic to have her there. Sean O'Brien, who's the working class guy, but they're clearly trying to expand the tent. So I thought last night was a bit more of a base sort of night when I would love to have seen more of a broadening the appeal tonight.
So I think the thing for me overall, I will say this because everyone kind of like that was the best produced convention on either party. And it's not just me saying this. I was amazed how many people from the outside media world said the same thing. Even I think Harold Ford Jr., big Democrat from Tennessee, said it on Fox last night. The production, Nan, you mentioned Amber Rose, the variety of speakers, overall best 4 days of political programming I've ever seen in my life. I will say one of the things that each of you said, and Doug, I want to start with you. The first half of the Trump speech, when he talked about the shooting, and frankly, the tone throughout, and Liz touched on this in a comment that she made on X, that the speech was profound and touching. It was sincere and serious. I felt the same thing that Liz expressed on social media. Like I was like, wow, this guy, I've seen him privately be touched. I've always said that he has a hard time publicly ever showing that side. Maybe this is as close as it'll come. But one of the things that you guys all seem to say, and Doug, I just want to start with you and then everyone can weigh in. I did feel like it kind of meandered at a certain point. The first part, and maybe that was fine because that's what everybody watched. But I was like Liz. By the time it rolled past midnight, I was like, whoa. But tell me what, I felt like either stop at the half hour or go back. But I was like, where are you going afterwards? He was giving shout outs to Sam Brown, the Nevada candidate. I was like, whoa, what's happening here? First half, 10 out of 10. And then it was like, where are we going?
Well, look, I think it's a normal, in many ways it was normal except for that first, but we saw this all week. You saw it in his eyes all week. You saw it when the family was by. You saw it when the grandkids were in the box. I mean, it was just different. And again, for those of us who've seen that other side of him off this camera, asking about your family, talking about your friends, what's going on in your life. That was, again, that's the part that's always attracted me, to Donald Trump in a different way. I mean, this is the candidate who goes to Ohio for the train derailment and talks to people. This is the person who goes and he speaks to those who've lost loved ones. And this is the Donald Trump. Look, that I've always said, when you see him like that, when he goes into, the pizza place, he goes into the Chick-fil-A, the burger joints. I mean, that's the Donald Trump that relates to the every person in America. Joe Biden can't do that. And there's very few Democrats that can do that and don't come across the stage. Look, he made a comment one time in a speech that he was giving that I was at, and he made the comment, he says, I go on a long time, he says, because I think I have to entertain. I want to bring you something that makes you worth the wait to stay here. And that's always, he said this from the platform. And so I think he believes that from that background of entertaining and making sure that people get it, and it goes to a deeper part of him. If people showed up that long, to wait that long, to come to a rally of his or to come to a speech, he wants to give them something. He's wanting to and sometimes the only way he knows is to keep talking and to share funny stories and to share, things that he thinks of on the fly, which makes him endearing to some and off-putting to others. But I mean, look, that the whole speech was done what it needed to do. Anybody that watched the Trump speech, I will say this, I would have been concerned if it had stopped at 30 minutes. If you had only had the first part of that speech without any policy out, any of the other stuff, then I would have said, okay, this is going to be an interesting night or an interesting next few months. But it was two speeches combined. We'll see where it goes.
You know what they say, Sean? They say he took longer to wrap that speech than the female Secret Service agent did to holster her gun.
Oh God.
No, but to everybody's point, and Doug, to your point, I have, and nothing has deterred me ever. The whole aftermath of the 2020 election, and I live in the great New York metro, so I've had to be confronted by opponents all the time, and I'm like, I know that man's heart. It is a heart of gold. It is a heart that loves this country, that beats with this country. And I just would really love, that heart is a 12 out of 10. And what I would just love is for President Trump just to have honed that oratory just a little bit. 45 minutes would have been perfect. But that said, I think, people are not, that's kind of baked in the cake about President Trump. They know what his digressive style is like. So I agree with you, Doug. It was good to see that this man has the extraordinary stamina to be himself for an hour and a half. In that sense, it was very reassuring.
What do you guys think about when I woke up this morning? I mean, this gets back to the conversation we're having now. So much of the media conversation was Trump reverted to himself. Trump, started with you. And I was like, no kidding. What are you guys, dumb? Like, he's Trump. What did you think he was going to do? There is this sense in the media that he had to roll over and say uncle for it to be a success. I agree with Doug. If he hadn't brought up immigration and issues, I would have been like, who is that guy? What happened to him?
No, he had to do that.
Right. And I felt like I like Liz, was kind of moved by, I was like, dude, if I had a bullet whiz by my head like he did, I loved, by the way, one of the things that I loved about the speech was when he brought the chart up. And Liz touched on this.
Yes.
But it was like he had these moments where he was joking and he's like, I didn't get to see this chart. Yeah. I was like,
it didn't go so well the last time. Brilliant. He's an amazing man.
And that, by the way, that wasn't in the prompter, right?
No. Well, so I had a friend who was there, and they said they kept having to stop the prompter because the president was going off script.
That's not a surprise.
The poor speechwriters. The poor speechwriters must have been sweating. Listen, he does seem profoundly changed by this shooting. And I say that not thinking that he required some huge transformation before, but it has brought out this existential element of him. He's had to face his own mortality. You don't come away from that unchanged unless you're sociopathic. And to see that, I was very touched by that. I have no idea what his personal relationship with God is, but it seems that he has really come face to face with his maker in a way that perhaps he never has before. And that's something that I'm glad that he revealed on stage, especially given, the fact that there's been some contention between this campaign, this go around, and the evangelical bloc. To see him reference God, to thank God, and to do it sincerely, not in a way that appeared to be pandering, I found to be very touching. The last comment I'll make about the length of the speech is the people that were maybe on the fence about voting for him probably only watched the first half of the speech anyway. People that aren't like we are, political nerds that are, crouching over our iPhones at 12:05 being like, are you going to finish soon? Like, come on, like, we got to go to bed here. Like, people gave up watching that after the important part anyway. And the reason that many of these independents vote against him is not because they disagree with him on policy. So I had no problem with the fact that he saved the policy for the last half. The suburban woman, for example, votes against him because they don't like that he's combative. They don't like that he, called Rosie O'Donnell names, that kind of thing. So he didn't really need he didn't need to recruit them with policy. He needed to recruit them with, hey, I'm human, and this horrible injustice happened to me because of the political views that I hold. And I mean, I'm going to repeat what I said at the beginning. I think that's a very winning position and winning message for him.
Yeah, Liz, you just made the best point. I mean, the debate was over in 30 minutes. Okay, everybody talks about it going 90 minutes. The debate was over in 30 minutes. The talking heads had already made their assessment. Everybody was done. It was just it's like hearings on the Hill. The assessment's made in the first 3 to 4 questioners, and then everybody has to go and write their story. They can't. I mean, we have such a Red Bull on Red Bull mentality in the media and everywhere else that we got to go write something instead of just sitting there and watching it. And so you're exactly right. And I think you and Nan are both spot on. The ones who needed to hear the first 25 minutes, 20 minutes of that speech heard it, and then they went to bed.
I've gotten a lot of texts that were like, "How did it end?" I watched the beginning, and I'm like, "It was great." But I think the point, Liz, I'm glad you brought up the religious piece of this, because it was authentic the way he discussed it last night. I've always said I don't want people like your relationship with God is between you and him, and for people to talk about. I always read these media stories. Trump's not religious. I don't know what he says at night to God. I don't know what he does when we're not there. Maybe he has profound discussions with him that he doesn't want to share. That's between him and God. But whatever it is, whatever it has been, I believe based on the speech last night that has changed. And sometimes that's what it takes is a moment. I listened to Don Jr. talk about it. And he said, I've never been a big spiritual guy, but something was at play. And it is those moments that reveal themselves. And frankly, the guy's a showman. There's no question about it. But what I saw last night was authentic and real.
Definitely. I agree.
Right, you can't pretend that sort of thing, even if you're a good actor, even if you're a good entertainer.
Right.
So, Doug, one of the things that I thought was interesting in terms of the reporting was Axios reported this on Thursday. It said, again and again at their convention this week, Republicans have rallied against a mysterious enemy responsible for many of Donald Trump's problem. And then they put the word they in quotation marks. And it says why it matters. To convention speakers, they are responsible for Trump's convictions in New York, his federal indictments, his multi-million-dollar fines, record illegal border crossings, and even attempts to assassinate the media. In Trump's MAGA world, exactly who they are usually isn't defined. And I was like, you tone-deaf losers. I know who they are. It's you. Look in the mirror. You are part of the they. Maybe you have pronoun problems, but they is you and the left, right? I mean, I kind of read that and I thought to myself, holy smokes, you guys really don't get this. You're they. I don't know, whatever your pronouns are, you are they. We don't like you.
Yeah, look, Liz made a comment earlier that she has problems with politicians, and look, I have problems with media personalities. I have a problem with media right now in general, because I have problems with all of us. Because frankly, this is what you get, and they're looking. Axios knows exactly what the problem is. The lawfare that's going on. It's the open borders that they can't explain because they don't want to try and explain it. They want to right away the Laken Rileys and the other moms who've been killed, and they can't do that in so in rational ways. Really here, I'm going to throw this out. The media narrative has a real problem right now. Not just that Joe Biden is incompetent and frankly has a lot of mental foibles and also physical issues. Their problem is at this point is the narrative is now switched to where they are the party that is, fomenting a coup against a primary elected president that they're trying to get rid of because he had a bad debate night. And their only arguments against Donald Trump on the issues of economy, immigration, and foreign affairs, the people aren't buying. And so they are siding with Donald Trump on the fact, we shouldn't have an open border. They're siding with Donald Trump on, I got 20% inflation. I can't afford the groceries that I used to afford. And we don't like what's going on in Ukraine and Israel and other places. So they can't sell the policy narrative. So they were selling the democracy narrative. Now they have nothing like that to do. So now they're going to this amorphous kind of thing in which, they're just making up these issues. They're not making up the issues. The thing that got Donald Trump back to where he is at right now is the lawfare of the Biden administration, the Department of Justice, the district attorneys in New York and in Atlanta and other places. That is what brought this back because people saw a government they did not recognize.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, I've told this story before. After the 2016 election, Liz, I had this conversation with these senior executives from NBC, like the top people who said, hey, we missed it. We need to set up pop-up bureaus because we didn't see a lot of these issues that, their words, not mine, in flyover country. And I know that's so offensive to people who don't live in urban areas. They're not in flyover country. That's just, they're actually out there, the backbone of America. And yet here we are, almost 10 years later, and the same guys are like, who's they? Who's they? Like, they are the people who work every day in America. They are the people who are offended by how you discount hardworking Americans, church-going Americans, gun-owning Americans. This kind of goes off of what Doug said. I feel like that this is the problem. We have a corporate America, a Hollywood elite America, a media in America that literally, and in academia, and the list goes on, of people who despise and don't even acknowledge the majority, frankly, of America.
Yeah, I mean, I can define it for Axios if they want to know who the they is that we're talking about when we say they allowed the assassination attempt against President Trump. For the last 8 years, maybe 9 years now, we've had a media apparatus, corporate media, who has called Trump Hitler, called him a dictator, called him authoritarian, called him a threat to democracy.
A lot of people have tried to draw similarities between Mussolini and Hitler and the use of the terminology like vermin and the drive that those men had towards autocracy and dictatorship. The difference, though, I think makes Donald Trump even more dangerous, and that is he has no philosophy he believes in.
Told people, marginalized groups, that he was going to commit a genocide against them. They have simultaneously allowed in our streets violence, looting, arson, assaults on cops, and no accountability for the people who commit these crimes. They have told us that it is only a matter of time until, if we are a woman, a person of color, an LGBTQIA plus identifying person, that we will be killed. And then they act surprised when an assassination attempt occurs on the president. No, that is not an accident. That is not a coincidence. That is narrative grooming so that some crazy person who has no self-control and no respect for the law does exactly what that shooter did on that roof outside of the rally. Simultaneously, Sean, they are the people who are propagating DEI. DEI is chaos. DEI is not about elevating women. It's not about elevating Black people into positions of power. It is about instilling chaos into our institutions. And what happens when chaos is introduced into our institutions? Tyranny and violence. So they are both directly responsible and indirectly responsible for what happened to President Trump. And thank God, I agree with President Trump. He was saved by the hand of God Almighty. But when we are saying they, make no mistake, we are very clear about who we mean.
Yeah, I know they. All right, I want to switch gears, Nan, because there's a lot of reporting now. Mark Halperin brought this up on our morning meeting where he's talking about Biden coming to a realization that it's over, potentially by the end of this weekend, that he will drop out of the nomination, not endorse Kamala, support quasi and open primary. First and foremost, I've always argued that the problem that they have to get over, the Rubicon that they have to cross, is the logistics. Who is the replacement candidate? And then how are they going to run? It's people who've never been involved in a campaign say to me all the time, England does it, France does it. And I'm like, that's because that's how they do it. Right. That's their system. Right. They know that system. We don't. The Democrats to say, oh, hey, let's run a convention in 4 days. I've done 2 of these at the highest levels. Everything is precisely planned out minute by minute. We just saw that in Milwaukee. The idea that you go, hey, we haven't done this since 1968. Let's just wing it and see what happens is not how it works. Then from a campaign finance standpoint and putting a staff together, do you think whoever it is, these campaigns, how you guys both ran for Congress, you don't just build a campaign overnight. Hey, I want to run. I need a campaign manager, a finance director, a research director. These take months, if not years, to build out. Nan, the logistics hurdle is what I can't get over.
Well, you're exceedingly expert and spot on, Sean. I think what they're hoping for, and there's a lot. Look, we all know that just given the way they view policy, that the members of the Democrat governing elites seem to live in a world of fantasy. Because no policy, especially on the economy, fiscally, the so-called green agenda, none of it is ever going to work. So obviously they're accustomed to living in the world of, make-believe, but they've been able to survive it because, to the point that you've all been making, we have had this cultural shift in our country so that every institution has been captured by that leftist mentality that government knows best. And we, the elites who have been the anointed in our education and in our institutions, now in the corporate boardrooms, everything's been captured. So they imagine that this is going to work. And the only way, Sean, I think that they feel it could work is that they will mobilize so much money, like a Jeffrey Katzenberg, who, as you know better than I, has been rumored to have had a serious conversation with President Biden, and
he's the Hollywood mogul. Just so people, he's the big Hollywood guy, right?
Right, so. Big Hollywood money. The Soros world, one presumes that they will come together and they will make this happen. But you're absolutely right that it all takes time. It's highly disruptive, and not only that, but Vice President Harris, whom they chose, I can imagine how her base, especially among women, and women of color in particular, are going to interpret this failure to endorse by Joe Biden, this primary now, this flash primary that they're going to hold under extraordinary circumstances, how they imagine logistically that those folks are going to not sit at home for an entirely different ticket. Again, it just, all of it defies logic, but that is the essence of the Democrat Party. It's all about illogic.
So can I read from what you're saying that you think it's going to happen, that he does drop out?
I've been saying it for a long time, Sean. I think he has an illness that is affecting the function of his brain. That is not a diagnosis. It is a surmise, but, I'm a pretty experienced clinician and I'm not alone in this. So I just don't think I think what we're witnessing is, so often with these conditions, there's a gradual decline and then there's, they kind of they're really headed down.
Is that a yes or a no, though? I mean, but is he out? I mean, I think
I don't think he can. I don't think he'll be able to stay in through November. I think he may be out completely. So I would put my money more on his being out than staying in.
Doug, Chris LaCivita said that the Democrats' attempt to push Biden out is, quote, an attempted coup.
This is nothing more than an attempted coup by the Democrat Party. They are actively engaged in an attempt, in my view, and a lot of people share this view, in deposing the President of the United States. Because, look, you can't step down as a candidate for president because you're cognitively impaired while still being president.
I got to be honest with you. I've been saying this for weeks. We better be careful what we wish for.
Yeah.
And this, to me, I'm sorry. Too many Republicans got on the bandwagon of getting Biden out. Do you think we're going to get what some of these folks wished for?
Yeah, I think I was on with you a couple weeks ago, and I said no. I think he's in, and I'm still at the point of 55% he's out now. It's growing a little bit. I understand Halperin's reporting. I get that, but he's got to dig in. The structural issues. In fact, I was sitting here writing stuff down as Dan was talking about this. Number one, history often doesn't repeat, but it definitely rhymes. 68. Think about what was going on in 68. We're back in Chicago 68. We're now at Chicago 2024. You got a Democratic Party in disarray. You got a culture that is the crime and perception is terrible. And you have a very unified Republican Party. First time I've actually looked at it in a different way, but that is it. I'm also going cold water on this from a primary perspective. You got a problem. They in their arrogance, they messed up their convention and put it too late to get on the Ohio ballot. Okay, they cannot wait to Chicago to have a vote of delegates at the convention. This has to take place because of the problem with the Ohio ballot. They have to have this done by August 7th. So this will all take place outside the convention floor. This will take place on a virtual meeting where they all vote. And this is only Democrats can come up with this kind of a solution because they waited so long to get somebody on the Ohio ballot. This is the reason.
Doug, if I can interrupt for a second, I thought the state of Ohio had fixed it, so to speak, so that they actually don't really have to do that?
No, but they wouldn't be having the continual conversations of putting Joe Biden in a virtual nomination position before August if that had it truly happened.
But just to answer this, they pushed it to the 31st, but it's with caveats. So DeWine signed the bill, and the Dems don't want to take what goes with it. That's the problem. So
exactly.
if they want to wait, they can, but then they've got to agree that no corporate foreign money. And gosh, you don't want to do that. So yes and no. But let's.
Also, the polling issue. Can I throw the cold water on polling issue here too? Look, for all of us sitting here, even the national polls only have this at a 3 to 4 point margin. I mean, with everything that's happened after the debate, the assassination attempt, now we're going to see a bump out of the Republican convention. We'll see that. But remember, we've got about Biden's hard floor at this second is still 45. Let's think about this for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, they have got a big problem. Harris and they're going to have to go to somebody that's the complete polar opposite. Why, if you're a Democrat who actually has a moderate portfolio, are you going to jump on a ticket with 3 months left? You're a Josh Shapiro, a Roy Cooper, Bashir out of Kentucky. Why are you going to waste what could possibly be your shot later on at a chance in 28 to do this?
Because it's that's politics,
why I say 55, not 75.
But I mean, Doug, look, you've jumped in a race before. You know this. The reality is you go with what you go. I mean, I get it. I would rather wait, but politics is you go when you can. Liz, here's the thing. I have said before, you can't push aside a black woman in the Democratic Party of today. They'll go nuts. What I talked to Mark Halperin about this morning is, according to him, he believes that Kamala won't necessarily get endorsed by Biden, right? But that no one would challenge her. And that these other people, I mean, this kind of ties in a little to Doug's point, that the Shapiros, the Gretchen Whitmers would potentially hope that she would pick them as a VP, but they wouldn't primary her so that the Democratic Party could say, we had an open primary, only one person ran.
What?
Well, perhaps, but let me answer the question from before, which is maybe previous to this question anyway. And that is Biden going to drop out? The answer to that is no, he's not going to drop out, with one caveat. One caveat. And to understand this caveat, we have to go back to the 2020 election for a second. So the 2020 election was obviously electioneered, right? You can call it rigged, you can call it stolen. They certainly used the legal system illegally in the lead up to the election to change rules on mail-in ballots, universal mail-in ballots, on drop boxes, on signature verifications, on all sorts of things. And it did impact the outcome of the election. That's pretty established fact at this point. The reason they were able to get away with this was because polling was so close. And what I mean by that is either outcome of the election was plausible. A Biden win, plausible. A Trump win, plausible. The polls were very, very close. That is not the case anymore in 2024. And so the reason Democrats are freaking out about Biden's viability as a candidate is because they were planning to cheat in this election, just like they did in 2020. In the interim, the past 4 years, the Republican Party has done very little to roll back or prevent the same electioneering that happened in 2020 from happening in 2024. And so they were counting on that. They were counting on Biden. They didn't care that he was senile. They just liked to be able to control him. They were counting on cheating. But they will not be able to pull off cheating and get away with it if in bellwether counties across the country, which we saw polling yesterday from these counties, it is now double digits. Trump is in a double-digit lead in these counties. So if you go in on election day with Trump leading by 10, 12, 14, and suddenly Biden wins by 2, 3, or 4, the American people are not going to accept that the same way that a lot of independents and Democrats accepted that in 2020. Courts are not going to dismiss cases in 2024 the way that they perhaps dismissed them in 2020, because it wouldn't be plausible for Biden to win. The cheating would be too transparent and people wouldn't stand for it. That's why Democrats are freaking out over a Biden candidacy. It has nothing to do with his health.
If Kamala does become it, just play this out for 1 second. If she becomes the nominee, who does she pick as VP?
I think it would be someone like probably, I would guess, a Josh Shapiro or an Andy
I think it would have to be
Bashir.
someone. I think it would have to be someone stupid, and I don't just mean that all Democrats are stupid. I mean that Kamala Harris would obviously lose if she were to get the nomination, and you'd have to be so out of touch with reality, so egotistical to even put yourself on a ticket like that to lose, that I don't think it would be any of the people that we name as possible contenders. Like last year, for example, I thought Gavin Newsom was going to be the heir apparent to the Democrat Party. I thought Joe Biden possibly, a year ago, last summer, might announce that he's not running again, give another candidate a chance to actually get that name recognition, get that campaign, get on the ballots. Someone like Gavin Newsom would never accept a VP nomination from Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris only got, 2% when she dropped out of the Democrat primary in 2020. Even Democrats don't like her. And people are supporting Trump right now. So anybody that runs in that ticket, if Biden does drop out, is essentially shooting themselves in the foot for a political future. So I don't know who that would be. Someone dumb.
I think Sean's point, though, is taken that, politics is as it is. And I think, if it were on the Republican side, God forbid, but then someone would step up saying, I owe this to my country. I owe this not just to my party, but to my country. I realize, we feel very differently about how well they serve our country in terms of their policies, but I think that's what's going to be in their minds.
So what about, let's just throw a name out there, Mark Kelly from Arizona, right? He throws his name out there because here's my thing. If Mark Kelly says, hey, I got a shot, at being vice president, and it's a free shot because it's a Democratic governor in Arizona right now, so they could replace me if I win. Also, I get to be vice president, and that was never in the cards. I mean, it's a free shot, and I think it does put Arizona in play a lot more. I mean, right now, there's no way. It's done. Trump's got Arizona in the bag. I think he's got Georgia in the bag. I think the question I would have is, if I were picking, I would pick Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, or I would pick Mark Kelly in Arizona.
Mm-hmm. And I think either of them would probably do it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, never underestimate the delusion of politicians thinking that they're going to win. I mean, that's actually what I think every time I see one of these primary, especially the primary debates. There's always one or two, sometimes 3 or 4 candidates on that stage that I'm like, do you really think that you have a realistic chance of getting this nomination? Like, you can't believe that. And sometimes it's obvious that they're just trying to raise their name recognition or sell their book or whatever it might be. And sometimes people are just delusional. They actually think they have this long shot. I think it would have to be a B or C level politician who would sign on as her VP. You might be right about Mark Kelly, because he would be elevating his name recognition.
So I threw out 2 names: Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania; Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona. Do you think those? I mean, I guess they're B level, right? But do those count?
Yeah, Mark Kelly is definitely B level. He might even be C level. Like, he could be a realistic one who would say, I would never have another chance a bigger chance to raise my name recognition as quickly. So he may be an opportunist and take that chance. I don't know about Shapiro, though, because I think Shapiro has bigger political ambitions, and he's built the apparatus to ascend in politics. And so he may not want to use a shortcut that's going to run him into the ground. So I don't know about Shapiro. Mark Kelly could be a yes.
I think they see it, and please, Sean, polling far better than I do as a professional, but I think they probably see vulnerabilities in President Trump's numbers, even though they are trending brilliantly for him and deserve to. But, we all know, again, this is not about logic. This is, a lot of it's about emotion. That's what, sadly, so much of politics is about. So I think they see vulnerabilities in President Trump and his campaign when it's no longer Trump versus Biden, but now it's Trump versus Josh Shapiro, basically. They see a whole world of suburban independents and women out there, and folks who may say, you know what, this guy seems like a competent manager. He's a governor of an important state. He speaks well. He can reach across the aisle. I think someone like that, maybe in the heads of someone like a Josh Shapiro, they're saying there's an opportunity here.
Well, I think that the reality is, if you're a Democrat, I mean, this gets back to Liz's point, and I think with the point you're making, their thinking is, okay, the erosion is largely because of this debate and because there's an old man with a poor memory, to quote Robert Hur. Gosh, we get rid of him, we add me, fill in the blank name, and I can bring X to a ticket, and gosh, we're back in the game. And this gets back to Liz's point about, then it's suddenly close again. And I guarantee you, anybody, you could literally put me on that ticket, and I think they would get a bounce, just because for at least it's a sugar high. It's it's different now. And that's the thing. All right, guys.
Well, let me make one more point, Sean. Let me make one more point, though. Going back to the original take that you had on this, about sort of the practicality of running a campaign and everything that goes into it and planning. Like, the logistics is a bigger deal. It's not just emotion. It's not just, should we do this? It's not just what's moral. There's I mean, 4 months to run a presidential campaign is not realistic in our day and age. So I think that we have to take that into consideration, because we can't underestimate the fact that every voter, especially Democrat voters, aren't heavily tuned into politics. So it's realistic to worry that if they replaced Biden, many voters that they were counting on voting for them wouldn't even know that the replacement happened, and certainly wouldn't know who a vice presidential candidate was. And that's not going to play in their favor. So that's actually a downside for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that here's the thing. It's a massive X factor, right? That's what we can all agree on. And but at the same time, I don't like X factors. I don't like change. I admit that. And I like the race that we have. We know, and people are concerned about, and the idea, they may not like Biden. I mean, Kamala, they may not like Mark Kelly, but I know what we got right now, and I know we can beat it. And I don't want to have to rethink the strategy. And I think the logistics, yeah, I get it. But there's a lot of things that have never been done before that suddenly happen. So anyway, guys, I appreciate you sticking around. What a great conversation to wrap up the week. Frankly, we're going to have a big week next week, because we don't know where this race is going. If the reporting is right, we're going to be able to break it all down for you Monday and tell you either he's really in or he's really out. But I think we will know by Monday, because you got to come out of that COVID hive by then in Delaware. Continue to subscribe, hit the notification button, because you never know when we're going to go live to break down breaking news. Go to YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeart, and Apple Podcasts to get it. We'll see you back here Monday. Have a great weekend. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.